Okay, everybody, welcome to day 2 of Energy Week. Thank you all for being here. And to start us off, we're just going to start with a little video.
Welcome to New Hampshire Energy Week.
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 We are excited to explore New Hampshire's energy future with you through a great lineup of events
that bring together business, policy, and community leaders from across the state
to discuss innovation, emerging technology, resiliency, and new opportunities.
Events like New Hampshire Energy Week help remind us of the importance of Granite Staters coming together to meet this existential challenge.
New Hampshire's energy future is now because we know the climate crisis is before us and we know we must address it head on.
Nashua was one of the founding members of the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. We're excited to be leading this work alongside so many other community partners across New Hampshire.
Together,
we are all a part of New Hampshire's energy future.
Okay, folks, thank you for being here for today's webinar. I am Sam Evans-Brown. I'm the Executive Director of Clean Energy New Hampshire. And we are today talking about the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. I will say that over the past year and a half, questions about what is in these laws and how to get access to the funds that are available are far and away the questions that we have most frequently gotten. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a ton of information to share, and more that information is starting to come out. And so we're hoping to gather all of those disparate programs into one webinar for all of you here today. And we've got some really great panelists who are going to share that information. So just some housekeeping. If you have questions, we are hoping to have a block for Q&A at the end of the webinar, but there's a lot to share and we're worried that we might run over. So feel free to just pop your questions into the Q&A box and all the panelists will try to answer them live as we go. There are 5 of us here, so hopefully someone will have free hands and the knowledge needed to answer your question. And then if we have time at the end, we'll answer some of them actually with our voices on the screen. And also you'll get the slide decks from all of the presenters after the presentation in an email, and we'll try to follow up with any unanswered questions after the presentation as well. So as I said, I'm Sam Evans-Brown, and my co-host here is Meredith Hatfield.
Hi, Sam. Hey, everybody. I'm Meredith Hatfield from the Nature Conservancy in New Hampshire. So happy to be here.
And I'd like to give a moment here to thank our sponsors, which include all of the folks you see here on the screen, including our premier sponsors, New Hampshire Saves, Eversource, the Nature Conservancy, as well as Revision Energy, Koch Northeast, Rath Young and Pignatelli. Also, we have all our organizing partners who made New Hampshire Energy Week possible. And the sponsor of today's event is Burgess Biopower. So I'd like to take a moment here to give Sarah Boone, who's the Vice President of Public Affairs at Burgess, to just say a couple words.
Hey, thanks. So good morning, everybody. I am only going to say just a few things because I know that everyone is anxious to move on to the real content of this conversation. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Sarah Boone. I represent Burgess Biopower. We are a 75 megawatt biomass power plant located in Berlin, New Hampshire. We're really pleased to be a part of this conversation about energy resiliency, particularly in light of the changes that we have seen in the energy markets over the past several years. And we are glad to be a part of the conversation about how to make our generation fleet more renewable while still providing cost-effective, reliable energy. So with that said, I will turn it back over to Sam, and I'm available to answer any questions about Burgess if any of the participants have any.
All right, I'm actually going to turn it over to Meredith, who's going to get us started here with the overview of the 2 laws.
Great. Thanks, Sam. And as Sam said, we do have a ton of stuff to cover today. So if we talk fast, that's why. But as Sam said, we are going to provide all the slides to you later for your reference. So today we're talking about our friends Bill and Ira. Bill was passed in 2021, and it is a massive game-changing law that I really think is going to move the needle in New Hampshire on a huge range of issues. Next slide. And then we have IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, overlapping funding sources and resources, but we're going to dig in a little bit on both of these laws for you. Both of them are a mix of different types of funding, and they go to different types of entities, and we'll talk about that as well. This is a great graphic, thanks to Catherine, which shows you just the broad range of things that can be funded. And I will just say, today, we're going to give you a ton of information, but there's even more out there, particularly when it comes to resilience funding. So Sam, I think you're up next.
Absolutely. So when it comes to the IRA, it's the bigger of the two in terms of the gross amount of funding that is expected to flow from it. And most of that funding, the biggest bucket is in the form of tax credits. So the Congressional Budget Office estimated that the IRA would result in about nearly $400 billion in spending. And about a third of that spending is in the form of these tax credits, which are now extended, expanded, and boosted. The question of exactly how much can you get for each technology is going to be something you're going to want to ask your accountant. But needless to say, there are a lot of tax credits that are out there that didn't exist before, including now the addition of battery storage, as well as other previously qualified measures. The biggest change, though, is that the tax credits were boosted back up to 30% of the investment, and that previously had been set to sunset and was already in the process of doing so. It had dropped down to 26% in 2021, and now it's been put up to 30% again and extended for 10 years. And really importantly, those tax credits are uncapped, which means that the Congressional Budget Office estimates that we're talking nearly $400 billion of spending, but it really depends on how fast can we deploy all these measures that will determine how much we actually deploy, how much we actually put out there into the economy. Credit Suisse actually put out a report that suggested it might be more like 800 billion, and Goldman Sachs estimated that it might be more like 1.2 trillion because these tax credits are uncapped. So it's really just a question of how fast can we deploy these technologies. As I mentioned, a lot of the traditional tax credits that you're familiar with, they've been sort of boosted and extended. There are also new EV tax credits, which are a bit of a mixed bag. You might have seen just a couple of weeks ago the list of EVs that actually qualify for the full tax credit under these new domestic content requirements came out, and there's only 10 electric vehicles that actually get the full $7,500 tax credit currently. But hopefully what this will result in, and what we've already seen in terms of announcements of domestic manufacturing capacity, is sort of a wave of new battery factories and other mineral processing plants here in the United States, which will be an important energy security dividend that will result from this bill. It's also important to note that this is not just about homeowners. That we're also talking about large renewable energy facilities that are able to take advantage of all of these tax credits, including if we're talking about multifamily homes can take advantage of all this as well. And as we mentioned at the top, there are adders that apply to all of these tax credits that you can stack. So that you have the base 30% tax credit, but for instance, if you have a low-income community that is in certain parts of the country that are designated as energy communities, so for instance, places that previously had a lot of fossil fuel workers, those can qualify for additional tax credits that can stack up to 50% of the entire project's cost. So the tax credits are the largest source of spending in the Inflation Reduction Act. They are available right now. There are some details that are still that have yet to be ironed out. But you, if you are interested in investing in some of these technologies, this should be an avenue that's already available to you.
Great, thanks, Sam. So I'm going to touch on a couple of the exciting programs that will be rolling out soon. These are significant increases for New Hampshire for electrification and for energy efficiency. And there are two great acronyms. One is the HOMES program and the other is the HERA program. And Sam, you can go to the next slide. So the HERA program is, as I just said, is focused on electrification. So that is with the electrify everything goal that I think is widely accepted as one of the things that we need to do to address climate change. So that will include incentives for things like heat pumps and electric appliances. The HERA rebates that are listed here on the slide do have differing amounts based on income. So these are income eligible programs, and both HERA and HOMES are formula grants that are available to every state, and our state energy office in New Hampshire, known as the New Hampshire Department of Energy, will need to file a plan on how it intends to deploy these funds. Obviously, they will be additive to our New Hampshire Saves programs, and we're going to touch on some of the implementation challenges later in this discussion, because while this is, fabulous news for New Hampshire, of course, the devil's in the details, and a lot of work will go into figuring out how we combine these incentives with some of the other ones that we already have. You can go to the next slide, Sam. I'll keep going. So the HOMES program is sort of your traditional energy efficiency upgrades, weatherization measures, air sealing, insulation, and things like that. I'm going to pop a couple of links in the Q&A so that people can find more information out about these programs. More guidance from the US DOE is expected this summer. And we're hoping that the funds will be coming late 2023, early 2024. And just a note that these incentives can't be combined with other federal sources, but they can be combined with things like the New Hampshire Saves program, as I said earlier. And this really is the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more in these programs, but we did want to touch on those too. Thanks, Sam.
All right, so these are the three panelists that we have lined up for you. We've just, as we alluded to here, we just tried to give you the broad sweep of what the programs entail, and so to dig in a little more into the details, we're going to hear from Catherine Heck, Mike Mosier, and Bridget Murray. So, Catherine, I'm going to hand things off to you next. Catherine is with the New Hampshire Municipal Association.
Thank you so much, Sam. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm unable to share my screen while the other participant is sharing. So if you could stop sharing and I'll go ahead and share my screen, that would be great. My name is Catherine Heck, and I am the government finance advisor at the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and I follow all things. Well, let me see. I don't think I did that correctly.
I can see your screen, Catherine.
Is it the full screen, Sam?
It is.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure. All right. Thank you very much. I apologize for that. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about how local governments can access federal funding opportunities. I do want to let you know in advance that I have a significant amount of information in my slides, and much of it will be resource information, so you can take it back with you after, because certainly I could do a full hour or even longer on the many opportunities made available by our federal delegation and their advocacy for us. So what we're going to talk about today is the funding available for cities and towns, Justice 40, which is an initiative that everyone should be made aware of, some key upcoming opportunities, some tips to succeed and some lessons learned, and the tools and references. So there's 4 types of federal funding: the competitive funding that I want to touch on based on the merit of your proposed project. And that's kind of the bulk of what I'm going to be covering today. There's formula funding, These awards are predetermined. So if you're eligible, you will receive direct outreach from a federal or state agency, continuation funding, which is the renewal of existing grants, and pass-through funding issued by a federal agency through the state. And again, I'm not going to touch as much on those program opportunities, as our state does a wonderful job and our state agencies of getting those opportunities out to you. So this is the IIJA, Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, or BIL, depending on how you look at it. And this is our state of New Hampshire and our allocation. So as you can see, almost $600 million in additional funding over the next several years for roads, bridges, and airports and ports of call, clean water, an additional 73 million, and affordable high-speed internet was 28,000. There are some new programs available as well for improving energy in rural and remote areas. So that is under the IIJA. And if you click on these links in the PDF, that New Hampshire link will come right up and it'll get really detailed about some of the competitive grant opportunities that are going to be available for the next several years here in New Hampshire. So just to kind of highlight in the IIJA, there's many funding opportunities available to a range of recipients. However, again, our federal delegation, we can't thank them enough for ensuring that you can see the check marks here on the local to make sure that they were competitive grant opportunities for municipalities and local governments. So for example, the National Electric Vehicle Formula Program, for example, Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Program, congestion relief, all of these programs with the check mark are available for direct competitive grant making through the Department of Transportation to our local governments. In addition, the state has received funding and they have to allocate a certain amount of those dollars as pass-through grants. And again, those opportunities will be at Department of Environmental Services or New Hampshire DOT, for example. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity for accessing these dollars. However, we have to be able to kind of understand what is available to us and where to go to get those funds. So under IRA, or the Inflation Reduction Act, funding for local governments includes establishing greenhouse gas reduction funds, environmental justice block grants, new climate pollution reduction grant program. There's a methane emissions reduction program as well. In addition to building code energy adoption funding, energy for water efficiency and affordable housing, which is critical right now. We know we have a housing crisis on our hands. There is opportunities for disadvantaged and underserved communities, funding for air pollution to address our air pollution concerns and air pollution at schools as well. And then there's a low emissions electricity program. So again, many funding opportunities. You can see the dollar amounts that were allocated for 2022 alone. I don't have the information for 2023 yet. These programs continue to be rolled out and will continue to have more rulemaking around them and more details that we are always happy to share with you. So another initiative I wanted to touch on under the Inflation Reduction Act was the Justice 40 initiative that the White House has rolled out. And this creates a goal of delivering 40% of all the benefits relevant to the federal investments that are being made at the local level to disadvantaged communities. So anything that you see highlighted in blue with an underline is a resource that you'll be able to click on. It's a live link in the PDF. So making sure you understand the interim guidance around it, and making sure you understand if you are a disadvantaged community, for example. The Lawyers for Good Governance released a guide breaking the differences down across all the different states. So there's a lot of resources out there right now to understand this initiative and how in your local community you may be eligible for these competitive grant dollars because you meet this goal of being a disadvantaged community. So the federal government really wants investments in climate and clean energy to be delivered to these communities that are marginalized, underserved, and overburdened by pollution. So that is critical. There is a mapping tool. You can go online to the screening tool. Again, that's a live link in the PDF. And this kind of shows you all of New England just to get a sense, but anything that is a census tract highlighted in dark blue will show you if your community is one of the disadvantaged communities and if that funding opportunity will be even more accessible to you all. So there's some upcoming funding opportunities like the Energy Efficient Conservation Block Grant. Much of these dollars were formula grant dollars. So if you were a community, and I believe that there were many counties and several communities in New Hampshire that received this direct formula funding, you've been notified already. However, there is a set aside for competitive grant making. The charging and fueling infrastructure for the corridor and community grants are going to be opening up soon, is my understanding. Strengthening mobility around transportation, or the SMART grants, are going to be available. Flood mitigation assistance grants, just from the last storm, my understanding is that several communities have had major road washouts, which is unfortunate. But again, these federal programs are addressing all of these issues that are around climate and climate change. So we'll be able to see those dollars coming into New Hampshire through competitive funding as well through FEMA, and I'll talk a little bit more about them. And then the Reconnecting Communities pilot program will be available, trying to make sure that we have reliable infrastructure between communities, especially rural communities, which I think is very relevant to New Hampshire. So these opportunities will be opening up soon. They had certain dates available. I do try to follow this as closely as I can. And I'm going to go through some slides now to talk to you a little bit about the dates. I just want to focus on the dates because I understand that these dates are already expired. These were last year's dates available for these programs, but it gives you a sense of timing so that because these dollars are going to be available in the future, it's going to help you to understand if this is a program that you would like to go forward with, get you ready for the competitive grant process. So when, in fact, these programs open up, you will be ready to apply. So this is the block grant program that I was telling you about. There was a formula piece to it. However, the communities not eligible for that formula will be able to apply through these competitive grant making. So there's official guidance. We're still waiting on for that program, but it's forthcoming. The charging and fueling infrastructure corridor community grants is going to be administered by the Department of Transportation. It opened in November of 2022 and has closed, but that shows you the timing. There's $2.5 billion available for the next 4 years. There is a 20% match required. So if this is something that you're interested in, you'll know that come next fall, you should be really getting your proposals ready to apply for this grant opportunity to install EV charging stations and alternative fuel sources in public locations. The Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation, or the SMART grant program, is now closed, but it is anticipated this will open in summer of 2023. Again, this is a U.S. Department of Transportation program. There's significant dollars available. There's no required match, and this will provide grants to rural, mid-sized, and large communities, so communities of all size who demonstrate a need to focus on coordinating automation, connecting vehicles, smart grid, smart technology traffic signals, systems integrations. So again, this is a fantastic opportunity for communities of all sizes. So be looking for that opportunity coming up. The Building Resilience Infrastructure, or the BRIC grant program, is administered by FEMA. And there's, again, significant dollars that are going to be available with a 10 to 25% match. However, there are some exceptions in the eligibility. And these funds are now available. The grant is open now, and they're available until all funds are expended. So local governments can apply for these funds if you feel that you will be eligible to increase resiliency and public safety and reduce damage to property. So that is a fantastic opportunity available right now. Another one is the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program that's currently open and available to municipalities with a 0 to 25% match requirement. And these are projects that eliminate or reduce repetitive flood damage, which again, we know is a huge issue and concern, especially in some very targeted areas of our state. So I would encourage you to look into that through FEMA.gov. Reconnecting Communities invests $1 billion over 5 years. So the first round is closed, but we anticipate funding in summer of 2023 to open back up. So this has a 20% match for planning grants and 50% for construction through the Department of Transportation. And this is a new program dedicated to reconnecting communities that have been cut off by economic opportunities. So local governments are eligible for this, and there's a live link to that grant opportunity at the bottom, which you'll get in your PDF. And then there's another program I wanted to talk about is the monetization of tax credits. So the Inflation Reduction Act had a direct pay or a transfer system to allow more organizations or local governments and nonprofits to utilize clean energy tax credits. There was some feedback provided. So the US Treasury has now created a new Inflation Reduction Act provision to allow municipalities to get monetary credit, meaning checks, back for investing in these clean energy eligible programs. So this is a fantastic opportunity. It's really just rolling out now. And I would encourage everyone to certainly look into this and see if there's any projects in your community that you're taking part of that you can get those credits back in the form of a check from the US Treasury. I think it's important to always touch on applying our lessons that we learned from the American Rescue Plan Act. Those were the transformative dollars that our federal delegation secured for all cities, towns, and the state during our pandemic or health crisis, in which they heard our feedback and they really did loosen some of the rules around the use of those funds so that they could be effectively managed and administered to have the most impact in our local communities. So ensuring that we're talking about coordination and priorities under ARPA and IIJA that can now also move into the Inflation Reduction Act. We can have local projects that maybe weren't fitting under ARPA or that we couldn't find the right program or match. Now we can leverage those, all the understanding that we have and move forward with some of these other lessons. ARPA was fantastic because many local governments that were not used to managing federal funds are now more adept at managing those dollars. So hopefully they will be able to feel more confident in applying for and administering these federal grant dollars and programs because of these ARPA dollars that we receive. And of course, it's very important to note that if you have not obligated all of your ARPA dollars as of yet, you have until December 31st of 2024 to do so. And ARPA is unique. It's a unique federal program in that you can actually use ARPA dollars as a match toward other federal programs. Usually federal dollars require the match to be local. However, under the revenue loss provision, it is not prohibited to use your ARPA dollars as a match. So you might be able to stretch these dollars even further if you have unallocated ARPA funds with some of these other programs through the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So some key funding indicators for success is improving the quality of life for our residents, making commitments to our local community and partner, both governmental and non-governmental, partnering with our nonprofits wherever possible to move some of these projects forward. Coordinating with other local agencies and our emergency management can be critical in making sure these dollars have the most effective and efficient use. Having conversations with the federal program managers. We have an amazingly accessible federal delegation in New Hampshire, whether it's Senator Shaheen's office, Senator Hassan's office, Mr. Pappas, or Representative Custer's office. All of their staff is incredibly accessible to their constituency, whether you're on this call as a business, as an individual, or as a local government. They are absolutely wonderful to work with. So please reach out to them if you have any questions. I just wanted to touch on some grant applications process and timing. So we understand that there's a pre-award phase, an award phase, and an implementation phase. This is available on grants.gov, but The pre-award phase is approximately 4 months long. The award phase can take 1 to 2 months. And then, of course, the implementation phase is until the project is completed. So, of course, there is some time here that can transpire between applying for the grant and all the work that you do and finding out if you're receiving the grant. Again, some of these resources I'm just going to put out there are resources to get grant ready. If you're a local government, you most likely are because of ARPA funds. If you're another person on this call, these are the types of places where you can get grant ready and register so you can apply for these dollars. Start planning. So when these opportunities do become available, they have some very short windows. It's usually about 6 to 8 weeks is the application process turnaround from open to close in many cases. So you want to be grant ready whenever possible. Accessing resources like the climate portal, the climate program portal, and the local infrastructure hub by the National League of Cities and Bloomberg. Other great ways to access resources available to us. And then, of course, I do have slides with a number of resources directly where you can apply right to the federal agency administering the grant. So I think that's mostly what I will cover. There are going to be a few more slides that you'll see in my presentation. I don't want to take up everyone else's time. And these are all going to be available to you with direct links. As you can see here, these are whether you can sort through Excel, there's rural cost analysis tools available. All of these are live links for our audience. So I will stop sharing my screen now and allow our next speaker to take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That was amazing. Really appreciate all the time that you put into your presentation and the fact that you'll be sharing all of those resources with us. And I have the honor of introducing Mike Mosier. He is Design Services Chief at New Hampshire DOT, and Mike is going to tell us about some EV opportunities in New Hampshire. So take it away, Mike.
All right, thank you. Let me just move something real quick. All right. So I think a lot of this information has already been discussed. I'm going to, at a really high level, talk about some of the federal funding opportunities that we have from the transportation side of things, items that we are handling through the Department of Transportation, and some of the coordinating items that we're doing through the Department of Environmental Services and also the Department of Energy. So we'll try to go through this relatively quickly. We already talked about Bill and we talked about the IRA. So from a highway perspective, I just wanted to inform everybody what we're looking at. So these are 5-year programs from fiscal year 22 to 26. Regarding Bill, we've got approximately $550 billion in transportation funding, including over $350 billion through FHWA. From the Department of Transportation, most of what we're going to be using is from FHWA, but there are some other modes that we have that we'll be looking at as well. I think Catherine did a great job of explaining the difference between the formula and discretionary funding. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of my slides coming up. But the focus of the bill is really on safety, bridges, climate change, resilience, which we're here talking today about, and also project delivery. And I think, Catherine did a great job discussing, who these opportunities are for, state government, local government, some of the non-traditional ones. We're talking about private industry or Indian tribes as well. And I'll get into a couple of these programs and talk a little bit about that. Regarding the Inflation Reduction Act, again, about $500 billion in funding and tax break. 400 billion of that's used for clean energy to lower carbon emissions. And from the transportation side, there's also tax credits that are available for electric vehicles and batteries as well. So with that, let's see. So the first program I want to talk about is the NEVI formula program. So that's going to be administered here at the Department of Transportation. The way that we're looking at this, we've got to provide DC fast chargers every 50 miles within a 1 mile of a highway on an alternative fuel corridor. Currently in New Hampshire, we've identified 12 alternative fuel corridors that we're looking at. And at each of these stops, we're going to be looking to add 450 kilowatt DC fast chargers capable of simultaneously charging. We can install more if we want. And there's some modifications to that with the discretionary grants where they don't have to be 4 fast chargers, but we have to put 4 ports out there. So for some of the community grants that are out there, we could be looking at 4 level 1s or 1 DC, or sorry, level 2s, I apologize, or 1 DC fast charger, 3 level 2 chargers, 2 and 2, however we want to split it up. But the key from the federal guidance is that we need 4 ports available. So I kind of broke down the funding that we have from the formula side of things. Over the next 5 years, we're getting a little over $17 million from the NEVI program in formula distributions. Year 1 and year 2 formulas have already been authorized for us to use. We're in the process of developing an RFP right now for the I-93 and I-89 corridors. That should be out either late this summer or early fall. And we're hoping to have some shovels in the ground early next year to start getting these ports constructed. The last 3 years, the formula hasn't been identified yet as to what we're going to get for funding, but we still anticipate that same approximate value that we got in year 2. All of the funding is going to be 80% federal that we can use, and the other 20% is going to be a combination of state and private funds. So we're working through those details right now. And the goal of this program is to have 500,000 EV chargers installed by 2030. The 100,000 is a little bit of an older number. I think we're closer to about 120,000 across the country right now, but we're working on building those up as we speak. The second part of NEVI is the discretionary grant program, and I know Catherine touched on this in the first one. So there are $2.5 billion is available for the charging and fueling infrastructure grant program, and that's further split into the corridor charging program and the community charging program. The first round of applications is open right now, and it closes on May 30th. So what they did was they took, in the bottom of the slide here, you can see they took the fiscal year 22 and 23, combined that and put out a grant for $700 million. 350 is going to each of the 2 programs, the corridor and the community grant program. There are certain requirements for each program. You know, for example, the corridor program, you have to have a minimum grant of $500,000. Maximum grant is unlimited. But I'm sorry, it was $1 million in unlimited. And the community program minimum grant was $500,000 and the maximum was $15 million. So right now what we're doing is New Hampshire DOT is taking the lead on putting together a statewide corridor charging grant program, and New Hampshire DES is working on trying to combine some of the communities that are out there, and they're working on a community charging grant program. So if you have any questions, you can follow up with me and I can point you in the right direction on that. But again, we have until the end of May, so we got about 4 weeks left to get this out. Second program, some of you may have applied for it earlier, is a CMAQ program. So this is the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program. This is a program that has been out for quite a while. We usually use it for transportation related projects. One of the items that we can do now is electric vehicles. Some of you may have applied for some funding under that program as well. But the whole goal of the program is to provide assistance for air quality improvements. New Hampshire over the next few years has about $30 million in funding that we have available. And this is going to be a reimbursement program. So, the municipalities or the RPCs, you can go through, build it, and then seek reimbursement for DOT. Very similar to what's been going on, like I said, and we'll go for a little bit later on that. New program that was just out is the carbon reduction program. Again, this is through Bill. So this is, again, the program is designed to fund projects designed to reduce transportation's emissions, basically CO2 from on-road highway sources. For fiscal year 23, again, on the formula side, we were allotted $5.2 million. We're currently in the process of developing a plan to figure out how we want to spend that money. More information is going to become later this year, but this is what we're looking at right now. And then on the bottom, you can see that the funding levels for 22 through 26. So we're taking a look at that and figuring out how we're going to spend some of those dollars as well. Another program, I believe this one's really being led by Granite City's, the Granite City Coalition through DES with Jessica Wilcox, but there's some information about zero emission school buses or clean school buses. This is a grant program that's out there right now. This is through the Environmental Protection Agency. And, there's grants that are going out annually right now, about $1 billion per year nationwide. Anybody available through school districts or contractors of school districts, bus manufacturers or dealers can apply on behalf of the school district to cover some of that. I know there were some applications through New Hampshire recently. I'm not sure what the status was, but another thing, recipients can, if you have the applicants coming in, let's say it's a dealer that applied on behalf of a school agency, we can lose state or local governments, again, transportation associations, tribal units as well. In addition to the school bus, we have the transit bus program. So kind of the same thing. This one's through the Federal Transit Agency. In fiscal year 22, there's about 1.6 billion in grants that were supported on 150 projects nationwide. Fiscal year 23, that number went up a little bit. It was about 1.7 billion or so. Applications on that closed on April 13th, but I think this will give everybody an idea, like Catherine said, if you want to start thinking about the transit buses, figure out what the timing is that this one closed, and that this one opened in January, closed in April. I would anticipate something similar to that for the next round, but that's to be determined. Program provided for the purchase or lease of zero emission buses, low emission buses, and that also included the acquisition, construction, and leasing of required supporting facilities. So there were some pretty good sized grants out of that for some of the facilities that needed to be created. Again, talk about eligible recipients. And then the interesting thing on this is the federal share for leasing or purchasing buses was a maximum of 85%. And then if you were looking at the supporting facilities, you could actually go up to 90%. So that was a pretty good grant program that's out there. A couple of other things I'll touch on real quickly here. As part of the IRA, there's the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle Program. So again, this is about $1 billion nationally. Rebates of up to 100% for class 6 or 7 HD zero emission vehicles and infrastructures. So if you're not familiar, those are vehicles that are either just below or just above the requirements for a CDL, 19,500 pounds to 33,000 pounds. These are your box trucks or, getting into garbage trucks, things along those sides, just to give everybody an idea. And there's some requirements, for replacement of an eligible vehicle with a zero emission vehicle. Infrastructure can be applied to this one as well. Workforce development, that's a huge component of all of these programs that are out there. The Build America, Buy America, workforce development, Justice 40. These are all initiatives that are all embedded within all these programs. So they're important to the federal government, and we're making funds available for that as well. The one thing about this program is they just released the second RFI. So we don't have the RFP released yet, or we don't have the notice of funding opportunity, whatever it's going to be. We really expect that to happen sometime later this year. Another program is the Clean Ports Program. Again, it's through the EPA. This one's for $3 billion. Again, rebates or grants. It's on a competitive basis. So these aren't formula funds, but they're the competitive grants. Same type of deal. Purchase and install zero emission equipment, planning and permitting, and climate action plans. Same thing as the last one. We don't know the exact timing of this yet, expecting something later this year. And then one thing, I know everybody's looking at resources. We had some training on this one a little while ago. So NESCOM, which is the Northeast States for Coordinated Air Use Management, put together an Excel spreadsheet, and I took a screenshot of it. This isn't a live link, but this is sortable. There's all of the top items are filters. So on the left, you can see that we have the who's the responsible agency. So you can sort there through Federal Transit, DOT, FHWA, EPA, whatever you're looking for. It kind of explains the program, explains the funding, whether it's a grant or a formula program, kind of gives some of the highlights. And then what's really nice is if you look over on the right side, and it's tough to see, I do apologize with this picture here, but there's different criterias that are marked off. So if you're looking for light duty electric vehicles, for example, that would be the first column. And if you go all the way down, this program is available for that. Or if you're looking for light duty electric vehicle charging, there's the second column, medium duty vehicles, etc. So you can kind of sort things what you're looking for. If you're looking for programs that are available to a municipality that cover medium heavy duty charging, you can go through this and sort and figure out all those programs that work for that. There is a link on the bottom of this. I can put one in the chat as well in a minute here. But this is a great tool. I highly recommend that if you haven't looked at it, take a quick glance at it, play around with it. It'll give you most of the information that you're looking for. So with that, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I will turn this over so that we can have our next presenter.
All right, thank you, Mike. A lot of great resources there. I will remind everybody that we'll be sending all these slides to you in a package after the event. And last up, we're going to hear from Bridget Murray, who is a business lender with the Community Loan Fund.
Thanks so much, Sam. It's great to be here with everyone. Give me 1 second here as I share my screen. All right. So I'm here today to speak to those of you who are small business owners, and also, of course, to municipalities who are on the call, or any others who work with small businesses, to really get the word out about really an unprecedented opportunity for grants for small businesses to make improvements in renewable and clean energy for your business, and also energy efficiency.
Just FYI, Bridget, we can't see your slides if you're trying to put them up.
Oh, thank you.
No worries.
Can you see it now?
No.
Okay. Do you see my screen at all?
You're just in the Hollywood squares for me.
Oh, okay. Let's try that again.
There you go.
Ah, beautiful. Thanks for letting me know. I practiced about 5 times. So
we're seeing your notes right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Don't worry.
Does that work?
Nope, still the same.
Telling me still not working.
No, that's right.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, give it one more try, and then if not, perhaps maybe Beth could share your slides, because I think she has them.
Yeah, I'll give it one more try here. Did that work?
Yes, you got it.
Okay. And okay, terrific. All right, we'll get started again. Yes, so as I was saying, an unprecedented opportunity for small businesses in rural areas and agricultural producers in both rural and non-rural areas, and nonprofit cooperatives. The USDA's REAP program has been around for many years, but there are some important changes from the Inflation Reduction Act that I want to touch on here, which is really just an opportunity for free money grants directly to your business to implement these changes. So I'm here from the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. Our role in this is that there's another aspect to REAP, which is loan guarantees. We're a social justice organization here in New Hampshire, serving small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and communities across the state. And we are a USDA 1RD loan guarantee provider. which is how the role that we may play in this. We make loans to businesses beyond this and nonprofit organizations when they're not a fit for or aren't quite ready yet for traditional bank financing. And we also provide training, education, and coaching to help ensure businesses succeed. And we have a few key areas of mission focus within that. Solar and renewable energy are one of those, as well as farm and food businesses. And then also reaching entrepreneurs of color, childcare providers, nonprofit organizations, and multifamily housing. So as I was saying, the USDA's Rural Energy for America program, or REAP, provides grants and loan guarantees for rural small businesses, agricultural producers in rural and non-rural areas, and nonprofit cooperatives to install renewable and clean energy and make energy efficiency improvements to their enterprise. The program has been around for many years, and New Hampshire businesses have actually already put $14 million of this program to work over the last 10 years. But this, the changes that came with the Inflation Reduction Act have increased the funds availability at least fivefold. So this is really a tremendous time to take advantage of this. So the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act has some really important changes beyond just that more money being available. The grant reimbursement has increased from what used to be 25%, was then increased to 40%, and then just recently to 50% of the total eligible project cost. There have also been some changes to the scoring to deepen impact, and then there are more application windows within which to apply. I'm going to focus on, as I said, the REAP grants and eligibility, the types of funding that are available and the deadlines, and then share some resources and tips on financing and applying. As I go throughout this, there'll be some links, and Beth will drop the URLs in the chat as I go through this. But really, my goal here is just to provide business owners with really actionable tips and tools, and everything that's included in here. There'll also be a couple of links to a couple of PDFs and another a webinar if you want to check out, that'll include these details and more. So first off, who is eligible? Rural small businesses. This also has its own definition, and you can get that at this link here. It's based upon the SBA's definition of small business and rural. And if you go to this link, you can enter your business's address to find out if your business location is eligible. The other group that this applies to are agricultural producers that can be in both rural and non-rural areas. That is defined by having at least 50% of income coming from agricultural production. So what that means is that basically, say you also do agritourism on your farm, as long as 50% of the income comes from the actual agricultural production and processing and not from those agritourism activities, you would be eligible. But all of this, and as I will say throughout, if you have questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me and also the USDA's REAP representative, whose contact information I'll provide later on. And then also, of course, nonprofit cooperatives are also eligible for REAP grants. And so what is eligible? There are two types of grants within REAP. You can apply for both. The first is Renewable Energy Systems, or RES, and Energy Efficiency Improvements, or the EEI program. The Renewable Energy Systems consists of solar, wind, hydropower, and biomass. The energy efficiency improvements include everything from high efficiency HVAC improvements like heat pumps, and then windows, doors, lighting, insulation, and then also importantly, replacement of an energy inefficient equipment. And so for agricultural producers, this can include more energy efficient processing equipment as well. So that could be anything from converting from a diesel motor to electric, compressors, and refrigeration, just to name a few. Next up, in terms of some of the details about funding, deadlines, and scoring. The REAP grant awards, as I said earlier, have increased from 25 all the way up now to 50% of total project costs. And that's for both renewable energy systems and energy efficiency improvements. There are a couple of important items to note here. The eligible project cost is the way that works is changed for the minimums. Renewable energy systems, the total eligible project cost needs to be a minimum of $10,000, and for the energy efficiency, a minimum of $6,000. And again, I'll share a link to a PDF later in the presentation that has these details in it. And this is also an important piece to reach out to the USDA REAP specialist prior to beginning your project to gather his input. In particular, if you're thinking about doing both, perhaps you're going to make some energy efficiency improvements and also install solar or wind power. It'd be great to get their input first on the timing of doing what. And the other piece about that is that the expenses that you incur in accomplishing these projects, you need to get prior approval for your business's application to ensure that they're all covered. If you start incurring expenses prior to approval, they may not be covered by the program. There are also more application windows to apply now. It used to be just twice a year, and now it's 4 times a year. This has been authorized through September 30th of 2024. But of course, we don't want you to wait. The next deadline is June 30th. So no time like the present. And then a couple of things that I wanted to note just as far as the scoring. First is that points for matching funds, those will still be awarded, but they've actually been reduced from 15 to 10 points. And the idea behind this is to enable more businesses to use the grant as a way to leverage funds to complete the project. And another change to this is that businesses that are located in disadvantaged or distressed communities, and again, this is a hyperlink that you can click in the slides, and Beth, if you can drop that link in the chat, that'd be great. These businesses that are located in one of these areas, many of which are located in Coos and Cheshire counties, and there are also some other areas in the state. But again, go to this website and you can enter in your business address, and you can receive 15 additional points for this. And again, these changes were made to really address those systemic challenges that businesses face in these communities. And then finally, I wanted to share some key resources here with you. This USDA webinar on the Inflation Reduction Act changes to REAP covers what I've touched on today and additional information. And then this REAP fact sheet and the REAP IRA changes are 2 really simple PDFs that Beth will drop in the chat. And those are both great resources. I've included Tracy Rexford at the USDA, his contact information in here. It's also on the REAP fact sheet. And he really encourages potential applicants to reach out to him in advance to talk about the sequence of activities, what you're thinking about. A couple of items to know in advance of contacting him is he's going to want to know about the ownership structure of your business and the details about the site for the improvements. So whether you own the real estate where the improvements are going to be made, or if you're leasing, those will help to expedite your conversation with him and get you the information that you need. And then a couple of other resources right here in New Hampshire. If you're making energy efficiency improvements to your business, you'll likely need an energy audit as part of your application from an approved professional. Tracy can also advise on this, but we also have a great resource here in New Hampshire with CDFA. And I believe that some of their staff are on the webinar today. And they also, they can assist you with the energy audit process, and they may also have other funds that your business is eligible for to offset the cost of the energy audit. And another great resource is Andrea O'Brien, who's the sustainability expert with New Hampshire SBDC. And there's a live link in the slides that you can click on to access them. And then finally, if you're pursuing a renewable energy system grant, when you're reaching out to installers for this, whether it's Revision for solar or another installer, they may be able to assist you with the application as well. Again, USDA, you'll need to reach out to them to get the application. But this is also a great opportunity to ask them about their experience assisting other businesses for completing the application, and then also the reporting that is required to actually receive the grant funds, which you won't receive until after the project is completed and you complete the reporting requirements. So that is pretty much it for me here. And then finally, in the event you are not able to get financing, traditional financing for any of the improvements that you're looking to make, I encourage you to reach out to us. There's some alternative lending options that we might be able to help you with, whether it's through the RD1 loan guarantee program, through REAP, or other ways to expand access to solar renewable energy throughout the state.
All right. So the prophecy has come to be. We are over time. I can't get back to turn my video on, of course. So we do have just a couple more slides that we'd like to share with folks. If you'd like to hang out, of course, you're free to do so. We are going to be here a bit longer. We can try to answer questions if folks have them. But there are a few more programs that we just wanted to touch on. And I'm going to hand it off to Meredith to do that.
Great, thanks, Sam. So we did just want to highlight, realizing how overwhelming this is probably, we did just want to highlight a couple of funding opportunities that are coming through the US EPA, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants, and then also just wanted to mention that there are also going to be forthcoming environmental and climate justice block grants. Next slide, Sam. So one really bright spot in all of this, and kudos to the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Air Resources Division, they did apply for a formula grant that it's a two-part grant. It's very exciting. The first part is the formula grant that any state could apply for. New Hampshire was one of 46 states that did submit their application just last week. This is up to $3 million per state for climate planning, which is pretty exciting because I think most people know New Hampshire does not have a climate plan right now. That is 3 years of funding to help New Hampshire do some climate assessment and planning work. The second part of that grant program, which will be rolled out next year, according to EPA, will be competitive grants to help states actually implement those climate mitigation measures that would have been identified in their climate planning process. So stay tuned for that. DES is expecting those funds later this summer, and there will be a stakeholder process, I understand. So definitely stay tuned for that. Next slide, Sam. Just wanted to briefly mention this funding opportunity as well, which is going to be rolling out soon, also from EPA, and more details on the next slide, Sam. So there's 3 big buckets. One is, I know, Sam, you want to say something about solar for all, so I'll just cover the other two. And you can see here significant funding for a green bank type of program. And then also an investment accelerator, which is going to fund some hubs to help people ramp up in that space. So Sam, why don't you talk about solar?
Yeah, so the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, this $27 billion fund, is one that a lot of folks have been watching very closely. Details have been a little slim on exactly how the $14 billion and the $6 billion pot of money will be deployed. And so I think sort of stay tuned is the message there. But the $7 billion Solar for All competition, we did get a little more detail on that. And based on that guidance, the State Department of Energy has indicated that it thinks that a brand new program that they are scaling up might be well suited to take part in that competition, and that we could use the money from that $7 billion competition to expand and make more robust that program. And the program in question is the Senate Bill 270, low-income community solar bill, which was passed in 2022, and the Department of Energy is in the process of implementing right now. And the first RFP for community solar projects is expected to be issued in June. And we have been working with the DOE to talk to them about how they could put in an application for that $7 billion competition sometime this year, and they've indicated a lot of interest in doing so.
Great, and I think you can go to the next slide. So we referred earlier to the fact that there are going to be some questions, and actually some of the agencies, before they release funds, have been issuing RFIs to let us and other folks around the country opine on what these programs should look like. So some of these questions are under discussion now, and as our New Hampshire DOE puts together plans to receive funding, say for energy efficiency and rebates, these are some of the questions that I think we'll all be working through to ensure that we can take best advantage of those federal funds. Next slide, Sam. And just wanted to share a couple of important dates for you. And Sam, I don't know if you want to say anything other than call your accountant. The tax credits are live and available and could be applying to things that you are doing today or could be doing soon. So, so definitely take a look at that.
No, I think call your accountant is the correct message.
Great. Thanks, Sam.
All right. So we are happy to hang out for a little more Q&A. I know we've gone over time. We've started to lose some participants already. We have been trying to answer questions in the Q&A box as we've been receiving them. But if folks are interested in peppering us with a few more questions, we could try to answer them here live on the call. So I am seeing one question about the COAS loop. For those who don't know, the COAS loop is a loop of transmission infrastructure in the North Country that was built. I might be wrong about this, but I think it was built during sort of like rural electrification days, and it's somewhat underpowered for the amount of generation that has been cited in COAS County, which has the effect of limiting the amount of large-scale renewable energy projects that can be built up in COAS. I don't know the answer to the question of if there's a source of funding that could be used to upgrade the COAS loop, other than the fact that transmission does qualify for the investment tax credit, which is obviously meaningful. But I don't know if you know anything, if you have any other insights on that, Meredith.
I don't know any additional details. I just do know that transmission and sort of that the idea of strengthening our grid generally to be able to move around the renewable power that we need is a focus of the BIL. So I do believe there is funding there.
All right. Not seeing a ton of other questions rolling in, so I think we will let you all go. And just once again, I want to give a quick thank you to all of the sponsors of New Hampshire Energy Week, and remind everyone that this is only day 2 of a 5-day affair, and our in-person events are coming up both tomorrow. There's an energy trivia night down at Smutty Nose Brewery, which should be a lot of fun. As well as on Friday, there's an in-person event here in Concord at the Bank of New Hampshire stage, which I think will also be really interesting. That's focused on next generation clean energy technologies that are just starting to commercialize now. And of course, one more virtual event on Thursday. There's our career and resource fair. So if there's anybody out there who is a job seeker, head up. You should log in and check out all the opportunities that are available through all of the really great companies that we have here based in New Hampshire. And thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Bridget. And hope to see you all at the rest of New Hampshire Energy Week.
Thanks so much.